So there I was, working at Marbles, my office and very much my second home, elbow deep in a bend of cheap scarves, when I heard his voice for the first time. "Hey, are you just keeping the best deals for yourself? Or is this the line for the register?" I looked up a little, initially irritated. After all, concentration was needed to score the greatest deals. However, James was there when I saw him, wearing a camera around his neck and grinning crookedly. "No line here," I declared as I stood up and smoothed my shirt, which was a vintage purchase of which I was quite proud. Merely ensuring that none of these priceless items disappear. His laugh had a pleasant, effortless sound. "Would you mind if I dove in? I want to add some flair to a photo shoot. As a photographer, I am. Because of the camera, I could tell." We both laughed when I stated that. It was a simple talk, nothing special, but they clicked immediately. I assumed James's sense of style was a result of his work. He mentioned to me throughout our conversation that he was at Marbles selecting accessories for a fashion show shot. I informed him about my talent for creating amazing looks out of scraps and sales merchandise. We continued our conversation about photography, clothes, and our go-to locations in the city for undiscovered treasures. An hour had gone by before we realized it, and we were still going through the bins together. James said, "You should come to the fashion show this weekend. Observe what I do with the scarves you assisted me in choosing." I paused for a brief while. I was generally just cleaning up after them at the business, so I wasn't used to getting invites to shows. However, there was something about James's honest approach that made me want to say yes. "All right, I'll be there. Seeing the scarves in use as opposed to folded up in a bin will be pleasant." "Excellent," he exclaimed, his eyes shining. "Then it's a date. Not a date, that is, unless that is what you want." I had recommended in jest that he buy a wildly gaudy scarf, and as we parted ways, we swapped numbers. My remaining time at Marbles went by quickly. The naturalness of speaking with James was something I kept thinking about. It wasn't just his appearance. Well, he was cute. It was also the way he actually seemed to be listening to what I had to say. His praise for my financial acumen was welcome in a world where style may be determined just by price. It seems like the weekend is coming up quickly. I couldn't help but be intrigued by the fashion presentation and eager to see James again. As promised, James was waiting for me outside the venue with his camera, prepared to record the occasion. The performance was outstanding. The scarves we had chosen added the perfect splash of color, and the models looked amazing. James and I then went to a quaint coffee shop nearby to continue our conversation. I couldn't help but feel a connection with him as I sat across from him. We discussed a wide range of topics, including our mutual love of thrift stores and our favorite bands. James scoffed at my stories of great victories at sales. He said, "You truly have a knack for this," while stirring his coffee. "Have you considered doing it professionally?" "Every single day of my life," I said. "But without the right connections, it's difficult to break into styling full-time." After that, things happened quite rapidly. James was introducing me to his family before I even realized it. My fears were slightly calmed by his folks' warmth and hospitality. We went down for supper at his parents' house, where his dad, Mark, was beaming, and his mother, Linda, gave me a quick hug. "Your home is quite beautiful," I said, sincerely struck by the warm and inviting furnishings. "I'm grateful, sweetie," Linda answered. We made an effort to make it friendly. Everything was going well throughout dinner until James's younger sister Claire entered. She was the total antithesis of the friendly greeting I had encountered thus far. She was dressed to the nines, and she smirked at my fancy ensemble, which I had gotten for a far lower price. Claire remarked, her voice brimming with a mixture of interest and contempt, "So you're the girl James can't stop talking about?" "I suppose I am," I answered, attempting to maintain a light-hearted tone. Mark stopped us in our tracks with his praise on my clothing. "Elise, you look amazing tonight. James informs us that you're an excellent deal seeker." "I'm grateful," I said. "Yes, I enjoy hunting for sales. Fashion is more enjoyable when it resembles a treasure hunt." Claire rolled her eyes, but Linda gave her a sign of approval. It was intolerable for me to wear anything so cheap. I'd rather have finer things in life than trashy leftovers. Mark scowled a little at his impolite daughter. "Claire, Elise could teach you a few things about saving right here." "Oh, please," laughed Claire. "I refuse to economize and pass up the finest. There isn't enough time in life for used silk." There was silence at the table. Embarrassment burned in my cheeks. James, on the other hand, remained silent and offered Claire a meek grin. The fact that he failed to defend me hurt. After dinner, as we were leaving, I couldn't hold back any longer. "James, why didn't you say anything? Your sister was outright rude." He sighed, a look of discomfort crossing his face. "Look, Elise, I know Claire can be a bit much, but she's my sister. I have to stick by her, you know." "But sticking by doesn't mean you let her walk all over me or anyone for that matter," I countered, frustrated. James ran his hands through his hair. "It's complicated. We've always been close, and I don't want to stir up drama. Let's just ignore her comments, okay?" I nodded, not quite satisfied, but willing to let it go for the moment. However, deep down, I knew this was something we'd have to address sooner or later. If things were going to move forward with James, he needed to know that I wasn't just going to roll over and take that kind of treatment, not from Claire or anyone else. Things with Claire went from bad to worse after that dinner. It was like she had it out for me, finding every opportunity to dig into my lifestyle and choices. One sunny afternoon really highlighted the tension between us. I was on my way to check out a sale at a high-end boutique when I heard someone call out in a loud, mocking tone, "There she goes, bargain bin queen herself!" I turned to see Claire, flanked by her usual entourage, sneering at me from across the street. Her friends joined in with laughter, obviously enjoying the show. "Yeah, headed to snatch up another glamorous discount?" Claire added, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Keeping my composure, I responded with a calm and clear voice. "Actually, yes. They've got a sale on their luxury line, half off today. You guys should check it out. It's a steal." To my surprise, Claire's friends paused, exchanging looks. One of them, a tall girl with sharp features, seemed genuinely interested. "Really? Half off? That sounds like a great deal." "Actually, yeah. Let's go see." Another chimed in. And just like that, the group crossed the street towards me, leaving a fuming Claire behind. She huffed and stomped her foot, clearly not used to being ignored. But the confrontations weren't limited to the streets. They followed me to work. One particularly busy day at Marbles, Claire strutted in, her demeanor as haughty as ever. She browsed through the racks of new arrivals, then came straight to the register where I was helping another customer. "Hey, I need a favor," she said loudly, cutting off the person I was assisting. "Can you give me a discount on this?" she asked, holding up a sleek, expensive-looking dress from our latest collection. "I'm sorry, Claire, but that's a new arrival. We don't have discounts on the latest collection," I explained, trying to keep my professional tone. "Come on, Elise, we're practically family. You can make an exception," she insisted, her voice edged with entitlement. "That's not how it works, Claire. I can't give discounts at my discretion, especially not on new stock." Her face turned a shade of red, and her voice rose. "That's ridiculous. You're just being difficult because you don't like me. I'm going to talk to James about this." "Feel free to do so, but our store policy won't change," I replied firmly, handing her back the dress. She threw the dress onto the counter and stormed out, muttering about how unhelpful I was and how she'd make sure her brother knew about my poor attitude. True to her word, James called me that evening, his tone frustrated. "Elise, my sister came home really upset today. Why wouldn't you help her out? She just wanted a little discount. James, you know I work in retail. I can't just hand out discounts. It's against store policy, and it could get me in trouble, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady despite my growing annoyance. But she's my sister. Can't you just make an exception this once? He pressed. No, James, I really can't. It's my job on the line. You wouldn't want me to compromise my work, would you? We ended the conversation there, but the issue remained unresolved. The constant tug-of-war over Claire's expectations and my refusal to bend the rules was straining not just my relationship with her, but with James as well. After the discount debacle, I did my best to keep my distance from Claire, but family dinners made that nearly impossible. At each gathering, she seemed more intent on flaunting her latest conquest, a wealthy guy she'd started seeing. She'd throw around comments about the lavish lifestyle she was expecting, each one feeling like a tiny jab at my more modest ways. During one such dinner, she was bubbling over with details about her upcoming wedding plans. Oh, you wouldn't believe the size of the diamond he's getting me. It's simply massive, she boasted, making sure everyone at the table could hear. James, sitting next to me, chimed in with genuine enthusiasm. Yeah, sis, make sure you snag that guy before he realizes you're way out of his league. He laughed, nudging her playfully. The conversation drifted to other topics, but the undercurrent of Claire's bragging lingered. It was clear she loved the spotlight. Meanwhile, James turned to me with a softer expression once we were alone in the car. You're quiet tonight. Everything okay? He asked, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I'm fine, just thinking about our own plans, I said, forcing a smile. His eyes lit up. Speaking of which, I've been meaning to ask you. He trailed off, and I felt my heart skip a beat as he pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Elise, will you marry me? He said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful, simple ring that was perfectly my style. Tears sprang to my eyes, not just from the joy of the moment, but also from relief. Yes, James, of course I will. We spent the next few months deep in wedding planning. I threw myself into every detail, designing the style of the celebration with a keen eye. I ordered a special wedding dress with a large bow, something unique and stunning. I sketched and planned each aspect of the decor, from the photography areas to the table settings, ensuring everything followed a cohesive, elegant theme. At home, I spread out my designs on the living room floor, poring over fabric swatches and invitation samples. James watched, impressed with my dedication. This is going to be incredible, Elise. You have such a great eye, he said, leaning over to examine a sketch of the archway I designed. I just want it to be perfect. I want our guests to feel as special as we will on that day, I replied, my eyes scanning the room, imagining how it would all come together. We kept all the plans and sketches in a folder at home, a folder that became more stuffed with ideas and confirmations as the days went by. Every now and then, James would flip through it, nodding approvingly at my latest additions or suggesting little tweaks. Things started to feel rushed when CLA announced her wedding date, which was suspiciously set for 2 months before mine. I couldn't help but think she was trying to upstage me. Meeting her fiancé, a polite guy from a wealthy background, I figured he didn't really know what he was getting into. He seemed nice enough but oblivious to Claire's competitive streak. One afternoon I was out shopping with Linda, my future mother-in-law, trying to pick out some last-minute decorations for Claire's wedding, as well as some items for my own. We decided to take a break and grab some coffee at a nearby cafe. Linda stirred her coffee, looking a bit distressed. I just don't understand Claire sometimes. She's leaving everything to the last minute. It's like she doesn't care about the details at all, she said. I nodded, sipping my own coffee. Yeah, it's a lot to pull together a wedding. Linda gave me an awkward smile. I hate to impose, especially with your own wedding coming up, but maybe you could give her some advice? She seems to respect your style, even if she doesn't show it. I can try, I said, though the thought of working closely with Claire on anything filled me with dread. The opportunity came up at a family dinner later that week. The atmosphere was tense as usual, thanks to the underlying rivalry that CLA seemed keen on fostering. During dessert, Linda brought up the topic. Elise has been doing such a wonderful job planning her wedding, Linda began, casting a meaningful glance my way. Maybe she could give you some tips. Claire, who had been halfway through bragging about her honeymoon plans, paused and looked at me. Her expression was hard to read. Thanks, but no thanks, Mom. I've got it covered, Claire said. Relief washed over me, and I quickly chimed in. Of course, whatever works best for you. Yeah, I want my wedding to be unique, not like anyone else's, CLA added a bit pointedly. The conversation moved on, but the jab lingered in the air. I just shrugged. If CLA wanted to take on everything herself, that was fine by me. Less drama to deal with. As the days ticked down to CLA's wedding, I threw myself into finalizing my own plans. My days were filled with calls to vendors, fittings for my dress with the large bow that I adored, and meetings with the decorator to ensure every detail was perfect. The moment I arrived at Claire's wedding venue, my heart sank. It was like walking into a mirror image of the wedding I had been planning for months. The floral arrangements, the decor, even the small touches I'd prided myself on choosing were all there, as if lifted straight from my sketches. Can you believe this? It's all so gorgeous, Linda exclaimed, completely unaware of the origin of the designs. I barely managed to nod, my eyes scanning the setup. It was more than just resemblance. It was a carbon copy. My mind raced, trying to understand how this could have happened. Then Claire and her fiancé made their entrance, and my breath caught in my throat. She was wearing the exact dress I had custom ordered, down to the last detail, and clutching the bouquet I had so carefully designed. The sight was a gut punch. I pulled my phone out and dialed James, my hands shaking. James, where are you? We need to talk now. He picked up, his voice strained. Hey, I'm at the back with the guys. What's up? How could Claire's wedding look exactly like what we planned? The decorations, her dress, even the flowers. How? I demanded. There was a pause, a moment of silence that felt like an eternity. Elise, it's all a misunderstanding. You're overthinking it. Overthinking it? I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Ending the call, I marched over to where Linda was standing with Claire and her groom, just as another relative was gushing about the decor. It's just stunning, CLA. The creativity here is amazing. How did you come up with all this? They asked, their voices filled with admiration. CLA glanced at me, her smile faltering for a moment before she regained her composure. Oh, I've been planning this for months. Wanted to keep it a surprise. I couldn't hold back. Really, Claire? When did you start planning? Because it looks exactly like the plans I have at home, the ones I showed to James. The area went quiet. Heads turned. Claire's face turned a shade of red, but it was James's reaction that caught my attention. He hurried over, his expression pleading. Elise, let's not do this here. It's her big day, he whispered, trying to lead me away by the elbow. Ignoring his attempts, I pressed on. No, James. I want to know why my wedding, our wedding, has been replicated here today. Linda, looking between us, finally spoke up. What's going on? Elise, are you saying these are your ideas? Yes, I said firmly. Every single one of them. And the dress. That's my dress, the one I chose for our wedding. The crowd murmured, some in shock, others unsure of where to look. Claire's husband looked between us, confusion written all over his face. James finally spoke, his voice calm but cold. Elise, the wedding is months away. I thought it wouldn't matter. CLA liked the ideas and it saved money. The guests watched, some with open curiosity, others with discomfort. Linda looked devastated, her hand covering her mouth. I stood there, the weight of the betrayal sinking in, not just Claire's but James's, the man I was supposed to marry who had so casually handed over my dreams to appease his sister. "James, how could you think it's okay to give my wedding dress to your sister?" I demanded, my voice sharp enough that it drew more eyes toward us. "It's just a dress, Elise," he replied, his tone dismissive, which only fueled my anger. "You can wear it again and no one will remember. By the time we have our wedding, it's not a disposable item." My shock at his response was palpable. "Not disposable? That's not the point, James. It's about respect, about the promises we made to each other. How could you disrespect me like this for her?" I gestured toward Claire, who stood a few feet away, a smug smile playing on her lips. Seeing my distress, she couldn't resist gloating. "I just wanted to look beautiful today, and I did. Thanks for the dress, by the way. It's nice to know I'll wear it before you do. Makes it extra special, doesn't it?" Her words were like a slap in the face. The crowd murmured, some in shock, others unsure of where to look. "I'm not doing this, James. I can't marry someone who thinks so little of me. Someone who sacrifices my happiness for his sister's whims," I said loudly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Before he could respond, his parents stepped forward. Linda looked heartbroken. Mark's face was set in a hard line of disapproval. "James, what you did was wrong. You should have stood by Elise, not undermined her," Linda said, her voice tinged with sadness. Mark chimed in, his tone harsh. "CLA, we are ashamed of your actions. Stealing someone else's ideas, gloating about it. That's not how we raised you." Finally, the groom's parents, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Their words were grave and full of disappointment. "You can't start a family life based on lies," CLA's future father-in-law stated sternly. Hearing this, Claire lost any semblance of control. "I don't care about any of you. I'll do what I want," she screamed at her in-laws, her voice shrill and filled with defiance. It was the last straw for her groom. He stepped up to the microphone, his voice loud and clear. "I can't do this. I can't marry into deceit." He looked directly at CLA, his decision firm. "I'm sorry, but there will be no wedding today." The reaction was immediate. Claire's face crumpled, and she started yelling at him, at her parents, at anyone who would listen. James, ever the peacemaker, tried to soothe her, but the damage was done. His parents looked on, dismayed and disappointed. "This is all your fault, Elise," James spat out, his words laced with blame. "You ruined my sister's wedding day." "No, James," I said, my voice calm but cold. "Claire ruined her own wedding day, and you chose not to see what was happening because you didn't want to upset her." I walked out, not looking back. The sound of arguing faded behind me as I stepped outside. The cool air felt like a balm. I was free from the twists of loyalties and deception that had marred what should have been a joyful occasion. Breaking up with James was like ripping off a Band-Aid. It hurt like hell at first, but it was necessary for healing. After the disastrous end to CLA's non-wedding, I realized I couldn't just let it all slide. There were too many expenses piled up, too many plans trashed because of what James did. So I got myself a lawyer. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was tense. The judge called the session to order, and my lawyer laid out the case, presenting receipts, contracts, and testimony from various vendors. But the turning point came when Linda surprisingly agreed to testify. Her presence gave me a jolt of confidence. "Linda, can you tell the court about the events leading up to the wedding that didn't happen?" my lawyer asked. "Yes," Linda started, her voice steady but filled with regret. "My son gave his sister the wedding dress and decorations that were meant for Elise's wedding. It was done without Elise's consent. I was very disappointed." And in your opinion, did this action directly affect Elise's decision to cancel the wedding? The lawyer continued. It did. It was the last straw for her, and honestly, I can't blame her, Linda replied, casting a sad glance my way. The judge nodded, jotting down notes. James's lawyer tried to paint it as a minor misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. After a long deliberation, the judge ruled in my favor. The court finds for the plaintiff. It is clear that the actions of the defendant led directly to the financial losses and emotional distress suffered by Elise. With the compensation I received, I did something I should have done years ago. I enrolled in a stylist course specializing in wedding fashion. The money helped me quit my job at Marbles, giving me the freedom to focus entirely on building my dream career. Months later, my phone buzzed with appointment requests and messages from clients. My services were in demand, my ideas fresh and respected. One afternoon, while arranging some portfolios, my phone rang. It was Linda. Elise, I just wanted to say I wish things could have been different, with James and everything. Me too, I said, though part of me wasn't sure. If not for that disaster, I might never have found my true path. Hanging up, I looked around my new studio, filled with fabrics, swatches, and glowing testimonials from happy clients. I was exactly where I needed to be, doing what I loved. Sure, the road here was bumpy, but sometimes life's detours lead to the best destinations.